Greetings and welcome. My name is Sarah Pennebecker and I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations at the School of Public Health at the University of Minnesota. I will be moderating today's session. Thank you to all who are joining us live today, as well as those of you who will catch the recording afterwards. In a moment, I will introduce Vic Massalia and Jordan Volker, today's presenters. But before we begin, I'd like to share a few updates and housekeeping notes. For those of you joining us in real time, questions are welcome and we encourage you to submit them at any time. I'll be monitoring the Q&A box. Please type your questions in the Q&A box by clicking on the button on your screen. We'll get to as many questions as possible throughout this webinar. And we'll be recording the webinar and encourage you to rewatch it afterwards or share it broadly after the event. Health in All Matters is a weekly podcast produced by the University of Minnesota School of Public Health to bring more understanding of public health challenges across the globe and close to home. We include expert voices from our faculty and their colleagues around the world. Our premiere series focuses on COVID-19 and the many issues it brings into question, such as transmission and prevention, life in a pandemic, loneliness and mental health, and the medical supply chain. You can find the podcast on our website or subscribe on Apple Podcasts. And now for today's webinar. This webinar was planned before the pandemic was really visible, and yet this topic to me really feels just very timely. Today, you'll be guided through a process of creating your career philosophy and navigating the complexity of the public health profession by our very dynamic speakers. I'm thrilled to be joined by Vic Massalia and Jordan Volker, the presenters for today's webinar. Vic is the director of the Career and Professional Development Center for the School of Public Health. He has extensive experience in leadership, career and organizational development in both the public and private sectors. He's on a mission to connect with and inspire people in transition so they can make a positive impact in the world. He approaches his work with compassion by developing his craft of facilitation, coaching, and teaching so people will discover their gifts and become their best selves. Jordan is currently in an undergraduate program at the U of M in the College of Education and Human Development, go CEHD, studying human resource development and business and marketing with a public health, go School of Public Health, yay! With the anticipated graduation of spring 2021. Jordan currently works for the University Rec Center as a fitness supervisor and has joined Vic in the Career and Professional Development Office at the School of Public Health this semester as a human resource development intern. Vic and Jordan, I'm so happy you were able to join us today. Please take it away. And Vic, I will give you.
I got the power. So everyone just takes a moment here for it to kick in and there we go. Oh, God, you got a preview. Shoot, you almost felt it was like your turn, Jordan, didn't you, there for a second? Anyway, this is our big hopes as we put together this program together is that we slow down, pause, reflect. We're looking to have you take an internal look of who you are. And we're going to explore some ideas to work our way through the madness that we're experiencing right now with the goal of having you start on a product that I'm calling professional development philosophy. So actually a written statement to articulate who you are and what you're bringing into the workplace or into life in general too. At the end, we're going to explore some next steps on how to put this forward. So Jordan's going to set the stage for us as I set the slide for us. So again, I'm having a delay in advancing the slide, so just a moment. There we go.
All right, so I'll just start with, I know everyone right now is feeling extremely overwhelmed, whether that be a combination of increased responsibilities or stress such as kids, work, high unemployment rate, finals, financial implications of the virus or more. I also recognize that on the flip side, there are people on the opposite end of that spectrum and no longer have work and are trapped in their own thoughts right now, and having feelings of uncertainty and isolation. Next slide, please.
Oh, I'm not too.
And then I guess with all of this going on, it is hard to stop and reflect on how we go about our work and recognize our strengths or identify areas of growth. And if you are one of those people who finds themselves without time to reflect, we would like to invite you to take the next 45 minutes to focus on your career philosophy and to get out of this hairball that we're all in. Next slide. And so regardless if you are feeling trapped in your own thoughts or overwhelmed with the environment going on around you, filled with stress and obligations, it can be hard to see clearly and think objectively. Gordon McKenzie refers to this as a giant hairball in his book, Orbiting the Giant Hairball, hence the name of the webinar. So today we will be working through this hairball and to help you gain a new experience or a new perspective and clear your mind.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Jordan. And just, we don't have to think too much about that metaphor, but how that, things are really cloudy and mucky and yucky, and we really lose perspective, whether we're on that one side of being very, very stressful, go, 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 and a lot of anxiety. And on the opposite side, perhaps that you're experiencing it a little bit or a lot differently, like, what should I be doing? And I'm having so much time in my own thoughts that my own hairball, like what's reality and what's not, right? So, I'm thinking about how we view the world as far as, I figured out what's going on with the slides, everyone. I have two screens going on. Okay, so thanks for your patience here. Okay, and so either way, though, we see the world as who we are and how we were developed, from nurture and how we were naturally born to how we were developed as individuals as far as our environment. And right now, what we're going to do is really take a look at this view of ourselves, and this will really inform on how we look externally too. And what this means here is helping to navigate through this cloudy COVID-19 hairball is to really take a look at purpose and why we are here. And we're going to be talking about purpose in a couple different elements here. There is data out there that state that with no purpose, or if we can't articulate our purpose, or if we have no sense of meaning, it does affect our health. Literally, it affects our health. Jordan and I were laughing. One of our data points as we were doing research on this was that one said, you will have what did it say, Jordan? 20% less chance of death.
Yes, I think that's right.
So we tried to look a little bit deeper in there. It was like, well, that's questionable because, I think the percentage is higher of us facing death. But anyway, sense of purpose, sense of meaning also affects one's bottom line as well. And there's additional data reported out there. So there's this model floating around the internet, and I've really done some work to figure out who actually put this together. But in my work as a career counselor and as a coach, it really has spoken to me as an individual, but then also how I have counseled students, alumni, and clients. And here, that first small circle here is like, what do I want to be? And this is what our seminar today is about, is like, who am I going to be in this space, in this environment, in this hairball, as we move through this process, as we move through time, where all this uncertainty is occurring around us. And so most of the work that we're going to do is really look at who we are, and then how can we grow, and we're going to talk about some action items towards the end here, but what type of framework do we want to get back into the orbit, because we're talking about orbiting it during this time frame. So we're going to pop out, take a look at some of these topics. And so thinking even broader is for public health professionals, as a career development professional, and Jordan, I'm sure you're thinking about this too, is that the work that we do, there's this concept of self as instrument. We are the instrument of change. We go in, diagnose, see what's going on around us, and then we're going to use the correct intervention to make sure that positive change occurs. Well, this is, if we don't keep the instrument tuned, if we don't understand how we're put together, we may be less effective than we might be. And so this work, some of the language that I'm going to be using is from author and teacher Parker Palmer. For those who haven't discovered his work, I highly recommend his work. He's got this book called Let Your Life Speak. He also has this fantastic book called The Courage to Teach. You don't have to be a teacher to really appreciate that work here. But pausing here, thinking about reflecting on who we are. Oh, that should say integrity is the second word. Sorry for that. It's blocked off there. But as we are orbiting here, is to take pause and really think about who I am. And this Let Your Life Speak is a book really talking about what's driving me, what's my motivation, etc. And to get to that, and throughout the webinar here, you know, I ask you to either pull up another window or paper and pencil or however you'd want to take notes. We're going to begin some reflective exercises throughout the webinar. I'm looking at the clock. I have 49 minutes left. Jordan's going to take up 47 of those minutes. No, totally kidding. I don't want to put you on that side. But she said I could tease her a little bit, so she opened the door. But to take some notes here, because we're going to begin this process of reflection here, and 46 minutes is not going to really get to the level of where we want to go. So who are we as far as identity? And Parker Palmer, you know, talks about as we grow up, these are the things that put us together. We have actually no control of. We have no control of our genetics, you know, the nature and behavior of our parents and their backgrounds, the culture, you know, what versus environment in the sense of like, I grew up in Rochester, Minnesota. I didn't have that choice, although I really like that choice. I love Rochester, and so forth. And so what has happened to me as far as suffering, and I broke my thumb when I was in 6th grade, and that's had affected me ever since, in a little tiny bit, but that's part of my development as who I am as a person. Here we go. Just trying to advance the slides here. And we have listed some questions here just to, when I'm working with students or an alumni, talking about, and their question is, what do I want to do with my career? I know I want to be in public health, and they want to do some self-assessment. I'll ask a series of questions. Some of these are listed here. And so to articulate what your gifts and strengths are, there's the Strengths Finder assessment that can even go deeper here. If you go to strengthsfinder.com, there's an assessment with a cost, but there's also you go free strengths assessment, you'll also see a really good one. I think it's out of Penn State. Okay. What metaphors do I think about when I think about me and myself? What motivates me? When I think about brand is how do I talk about myself to other people? And this could be like elevator pitch, using business language, like this is what I'm bringing to the table. What are those things? The value, the unique value of promise. What brings me joy? What are my talents, my skills, my abilities? What are my value sets? And we're gonna go deeper into these a little bit later. But this sense of knowing who I am, going through the storm, going through the hairball, gives a sense of comfort and courage and helps guide the way. Integrity is, we've heard it, the phrase used, well, integrity means you do as what you say you're going to do. It's a promise, and that is an accurate description too. It's also, from my point of view, and I would argue that Parker Palmer would he says it in a little bit different ways, it's how we behave, who we are. So if I say that, you know, my kids are a high value of mine, and I believe that's who I am, this is where the behavior will see if it matches my aspiration or the value. That value might come across different ways. So the integrity part means that I'm working with my kids, I'm in their space, I'm helping them learn online, and I get to spend a lot of time with my children. So that can honor that value. Another way to look at it too is I don't have that time, but another way that I'm supporting my children is through working and creating income so they can have a better life. Let's see that we have a couple of yours in there. We'll have to revise that in the you'll have access to these slides and we'll send them out to you. The quote though, that really means you could substitute your profession for the word teaching. All like good teaching, good coaching, good epidemiology work cannot be reduced to technique. And this is what we're looking, we learn technique through our education, through experiential learning, but good practice comes through knowing who we are and how we behave. And this great quote from Henry Cloud saying that just as we leave the effects of our work behind in results, we leave the effects of our intentions with the people in their hearts, minds, and souls. So people will remember how you treated them versus, you know, what you tell them. You know, that's a is it Maya Angelou quote? I think it is. So, but I'll call myself out on that when I follow up with this and review this webinar. Okay, so integrity. So as we had a litany of questions regarding self and identity, here are some questions that you may want to reflect upon when it talks about integrity. You know, how do I show up? What are the behaviors that I'm exhibiting when I'm doing my work or interacting with others? You know, am I reflecting my strengths, abilities, and talents? One of the things one of the greatest benefits of taking a Strengths Finder assessment is it's getting some words to articulate what you do naturally, or what are some of your skills and abilities and things that feel natural to you. And one of the things that I work with students and alumni is that you get your top 5 strengths when you take that assessment. And mine happens to be, it's called includer. And so there are a couple strengths that have unique names, includer. And so what I ask of them is like, how does that show up on my day-to-day work? And to find specific examples on how I like to include people in the work. Jordan is such a trooper here. I asked her if she would like to present with me very recently because I know she has a lot to bring to the table. We have all been really busy in COVID land recently, so she graciously said yes to my inclusion strength here. So thanks again, Jordan, for helping me make this a better presentation. How can I get this information back to? Am I living with integrity? Am I living my values? And so again, there is this feedback loop. Do I know who I am? Can I articulate my skills, abilities, and talents? And then how are they playing out on my day-to-day work? Okay, so I would say when you have some time, and again, you have these slides as well, I just take a few minutes and jot down some notes on what you think about these. And when you can substitute client, space, student for whatever environment that you're in. Or do you pretty much the same regarding who you present across the board? So this quote comes from another scholar, researcher that I really, really admire too, Brene Brown, and thinking about, you know, there's being yourself, and then the integrity part is being honest and true to yourself. And it does take courage. Her topic is and focuses on vulnerability and shame. And so do I have the courage to behave the way that I'm put together? It's Daring Greatly is a really great book that I'd highly recommend. And so courage, The original definition of courage is, it first came to English, it's from the Latin word cor, corazon. I don't speak any foreign language except for that. That word's the only one I know, meaning heart. And the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. And that's the purpose of why we're orbiting right now. And so I'm going to advance a couple slides and then I'm going to go back a couple slides here. I'm just going to pause. We're about 20 minutes in here, and I want to see if we have any questions up until this point. And feel free to jot them in the chat box there, and Sarah and Jordan are going to help me monitor to see if we have any responses. Our next section is going to be on creating this thing that we're calling a career philosophy statement, or Richard Leider has recently had a presentation on purpose here. He would call it the Purpose Manifesto. So, okay. Great. Thank you. Really appreciate that. I'm reading a couple notes here. Oh, yeah. Thank you for the clarification. I'm to ask if you would please put the questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat. Thank you so much for that clarification. I'm kind of going rogue there for a moment. Okay. But if you know me a little bit, I might accidentally do that occasionally. Okay. So let's go forward here. We want to end with a product of something that we can articulate who we are and how we go about our work. And we're calling this a career philosophy. I have mine listed on my LinkedIn page. So it was, for me, in a practical sense, it was really helpful for me to just remember who I am and what I do during the pandemic. Specifically, it's been very, very beneficial for me now. So I think about this in terms like, well, why a career development or why a career philosophy here? And I think about my work, and perhaps you will think about your work as well, as a craft, a trade, something that I think about, how can I get better? How can I get to be the best career development professional I can be? How can I best serve the students and my colleagues and alumni on a day-to-day basis? I love that it's a noun, but I like the idea that this is a verb. How do I work on that instrument that I talked about earlier to make it even sharper, better, more efficient? And the word philosophy, first of all, when we think about, or when many people think about philosophy, it sounds airy-fairy, heads in the clouds, like, okay, what's the meaning of air? Okay, well, I'm not getting that deep, okay? Or maybe that's not even deep at all, okay? But philosophy, what are the truths? What are the truths about who I am? What are the truths how I think about my work? You know, this the second definition here, articulating what your philosophy is, can help calm in the presence of troubles and annoyances, as this is where we are, as Jordan eloquently kicked us off with on what this hairball is. So this is why I'm putting together, like, how to put together your philosophy and for what purpose here. So some of this work is based on, you know, when you work on a master's program in higher education, in general, most universities will require their teachers to put together a teaching philosophy. And Stephen Brookfield, a professor that I had when I was working on my degree at the University of St. Thomas, he shared some of these ideas as well, as far as what are these components of a philosophy statement and what does it mean for teachers. It does give us a sense of direction. It does help us find calmness and clarity as we move through these troubled times. And also for me, it documents and showcases a reflection of like where I've been, and then it will give me a preview on how I want to navigate going forward on the professional development track. So I just thought this is where we had that other quote here from that publication, said that you'll have a 20% less chance of dying if you know your purpose here. But actually, there's data that does support here that working on purpose is not just for funs and games, or like the philosophy in your heads in the cloud mindset. And by the way, we are going to be working through this philosophy statement in these 3 parts, and I'm just kicking you off: purpose, values, and vision. We're just going to start off with purpose here. And so I'm pulling together some methodology from various different people, and this is where Simon Sinek, who's written the book Start With Why. He also has one of the most popular TED Talks out there. If you Google Start With Why, you'll see this 20-minute talk where he talks about a why statement, and I'm using it interchangeably with a purpose statement. And how he defines it here is that if we think about who I am, why I'm here, why I get up in the morning, he breaks it down into 2 parts here. I'm on this earth, I do this work because, or to, this is what I'm going to contribute, and that there is some impact. So when, actually I would like to have you take a minute or so just to start thinking about these things as what inspires me. I see some of my, as a career development professional, I ask myself, what are the reasons why I do the work that I do? What gives my work meaning? There's this wonderful book called Callings also. It's a fantastic book. So what's the world calling me to do? And that can help you.
All right, we have a question in the meantime.
Oh, yes.
If you wouldn't mind answering. So the question is, does Vic have recommendations for how not to compromise yourself when meeting other people's needs? I find that particularly difficult, which we talked about today, actually. So.
Yes, we did. And so for a lot of it is getting honed down and being really clear about who you are and what you're bringing to the table. The tricky part here is that as we're developing specifically as young professionals, and there's a hierarchy and there's authority, and we specifically when we're new to an organization, it's hard to maintain that idea of like, do I conform or do I be my true self? And there has to be a compromise to some extent, because we do need to make sure that we're in an environment that we're not only contributing here, but we also need to conform and adapt to make sure that the job is getting done. And so for me, I think about these as crafting experiments as the language that I like to use. There's another resource that's called Working Identities. And this mindset of like, and this is where I'm talking about too, is like, what am I becoming as a professional? And crafting experiments means, okay, I know myself well. I'm going to, and I'm in an environment where I can't feel like I can be myself all the time. I'm going to practice experiments on how I can be authentic and honor my values in this certain scenario, and then ask for feedback. You can also use some language like, Jordan, forgive me for a moment. I'm trying something out here. I typically don't speak up at meetings. I'm going to speak up today because something's really on my mind. The topic that we're talking about is just not sitting well with my values, or something like that. Okay. And Jordan, if you could, the person that asked that question rather, feel free to continue to make sure that I answer that question, and Jordan can relay that back to me. Okay. So what I'm asking you to do is put together a purpose statement, all right? Purpose statement, like a sentence, and I just used of the 4, I've just used, I get up in the morning to, and then there's a so that in the morning. You'll see 3 of the 4 do match this structure. I'll just read a couple of them. The first one says, to empower and educate people everywhere so that they can improve their lives and achieve their goals. So the person that wrote this, it feels like it's in his or her DNA, okay, to empower, to educate, to teach other, okay. I put in Dr. Olsterholm's why statement or purpose statement here. It doesn't follow the formula of of what we're trying to do here, but this was an interview just with him last month. And on his, you can really get a sense of what his why is, what his purpose is. It's like, we need to address the next pandemic, which, like, we're in one right now. So he's future oriented. How can we get through this one to inform the next one? Okay, that's how I see how he are, watching him and being a scholar of his. That came out correctly. Watching his awesome work, I captured that from him, his purpose here. And then for me, I've articulated this as, like, I'm here to connect with people, make a bond so that I can help them through transition and actually to make a positive impact on the world. So I think of myself, my purpose here really is to help the helpers. Okay. And I'm advancing, there we go. So why don't you take just a few moments here and play with this. I get up in the morning too, or as a public health professional, I'm here to do what? What type of a contribution? What are you giving? What are you trying to provide out there? And then what would the impact of that be? And you feel free to write some drafts or your thoughts here in the Q&A. Or not. Because again, this is where we're going to be thinking about much deeper here, probably after the webinar, and you'll have these slides too to follow up. Okay, we'll keep going. So Jordan and I designed this form here, and that we're going to go step by step. So here's mine. It's, as I mentioned, to connect and inspire people in transition so they can make a positive impact in the world. I put images in there too of people or things that mean a lot to me, that speak to me. And this is a picture or a painting of John Keats. I have a whole story about John Keats and purpose. We just don't have time to talk about that, but he, to me, is my Quan. You watch Jerry Maguire, you'll know what that reference is. He's the Quan of purpose for me, okay? He wanted to do the world some good. And Jordan, you want to talk a little bit about yours and perhaps how you put it together?
Definitely. So I actually struggled with writing this, and after talking to Vic, I think where my roadblock was kind of what I think other people see me as versus what I see myself as. And so this is what I came up with, and this is how I perceive myself. And my purpose is to build relationships with others and form communities, and then to provide opportunities and resources to motivate others to be their best self.
Very well done. Very well done. Yeah, and so that's a really good point. Thank you for sharing that too, Jordan. And we talked about the word cliche too, didn't we? And sometimes this feels like, well, I'm in a pageant and I want world peace. Well, doesn't everybody? Well, I hope everybody wants world peace, but for some it feels cliche. And when I advise people when they write cover letters and they want to write something similar, my thought is, if it's authentic and it's accurate, it's not necessarily cliche. So whatever works for you, the language that works for you is the right language. Jordan, do you want to read the one? I see that we have one in the Q&A. Thank you for sharing.
So, so to promote and improve the health of the individuals and communities I serve, and that is our purpose statement that was shared.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. It's totally in line with what we're talking about as we're forming this philosophy statement. And keep them coming as you want, as you would. So right now we're going to be talking about values, and values are the way we go about our life, the way that we treat each other. It's our beliefs. It does represent our priorities. And many of us, through the hairball and through the work, detach or we lose our values. And part of that is, I'll use the example again, as far as like, I really am working to provide for my kids. And if time was the espoused value, but I'm not spending any time, and there's a disconnect there. So there's some behavior that might need to occur. I'm just checking. We have a comment in the chat. If you see it, do you want to address it, Jordan? You see it?
Yes, we were just sharing another purpose statement that was created a while back and is still relevant today.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. So how can I get to these value questions? And so when you have some time, you can fill out some of these questions. There are many, many value clarification activities out there on the internets. The U of M has one. It also has a great skills one. If you Google U of M skills card sort or values card sort, it forces you, it's actually a really fun activity that you select the values or the skills and you have to pick like 5. And so it's a really mental game as far as like, oh, what are my values? I have to articulate them in 5. So actually it's really helpful.
So we have another question.
Sure.
So the entire comment is, so I am sometimes so deep in the transitions and tragedy of this pandemic that I struggle to think at a higher level about my purpose and values. What are some strategies for finding your higher level purpose when you can't see beyond immediate stress response?
That's a fantastic question. Thank you for that, Angela. I appreciate that. This is where, like, we're only spending 50 minutes together. We only have like 20 minutes left here. And thank you for first of all, for coming to a session like this. This is part of making the time to do the reflection that we need to do. It is a really, really tough thing to do when we're going. And it's, this is something that we can't just do. Like, okay, fill these 5, there's 4. Fill out these 4 questions. Oh, bam, I got it. It's, everybody's different as well. For me, this is also an argument of mindfulness and detachment and having to spend some time with self. And everything's urgent. I truly understand that this is a luxury at best to dive deeper into a higher purpose when we are hitting the ground running. So this is this session is really a call to see if we can find the time at moments over little periods a day or over the weeks to really revisit who we are, to question what these are, this idea of what are we becoming, that we don't forget about how I can get better in a crisis. So I hope that addressed your question there, and we can explore it further as time allows, or feel free to contact me individually. I appreciate that. That question really means a lot to me because I'm out of breath as far as the environment as well too. So thank you for that. I put some examples here of how some people have articulated their values: loyalty, honesty. I value financial security, and I've listed mine of inclusion, creativity. Jordan, which one's the right one?
All of them.
Oh, good answer. I had to put you on the spot there. So there are some assessments out there, tons and tons of value clarification exercises or lists. Some of them will have an assessment, like a free assessment that it'll give you some decisions to make. Some of them will just be a list on a grid. And what's hard is if you had to rank them. And that's been very, very difficult for me. It's because I think a lot of things are important. So I would take a few minutes if and when you can, just to articulate, write them down, have them right in front of you. The next thing I would also ask is like, how, we talked about integrity earlier, how does this show up in my life? How does being generous show up? Am I living that value? Okay. Forgiveness. How is my value showing up? That's one of my highest values. So going back to our form rather, I've listed mine here. And as a career counselor, again, in an interview, if I were to be asked, like, Vic, what are your values? And can you give me an example? I would prepare to have a specific example that would articulate how these values are manifested in my life.
And then some that I came up with was integrity, health, community, accountability, relationships, generosity, and development, and fun. And I think that you can see some of those values show up in my purpose statements as well.
Jordan, can you share just a little bit on how you approach this exercise?
Yeah, so I went with my values first, actually, because those are things I knew right away, whether that be my values in school or work or my personal life. I think all of these apply to all of those areas. And so then I moved on to the vision, which we will talk about, but it's really what I wanted to see. And so I ended up working backwards, really, and then developing my purpose statement based on those values.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Feel free to, if you want to list to everyone, if you want to list either how you approach this, if you want to list some of your values here, you're more than welcome to share. Appreciate that. Vision, what do we want to create? This one, I find vision is very interesting and exciting from my point of view. To me, vision is, how do I see my purpose? How do I see my values manifest on a day-to-day basis? In addition, I think about, like, what am I actually doing? What are the skills? I see myself inspiring and connecting with people by doing these things. So I'm putting two things together. So this is what I do, what to do. Okay, vision extends the purpose and the values to your ideal state. And so, Jordan, kind of like what you're saying here is that purpose, how do you see that come alive? And like you mentioned, it's kind of in your vision as well, isn't it? Okay. Here's some centering questions on visions. Like, what's the ideal I'm looking for? What am I trying to create? Okay. I put an artistic question in here too. It's like, what metaphor, or what song, what poem really captures how you approach your vision? What's it look like? To me, and okay, like I said earlier, cliche can be thought of corny, but the first thing that came to me in my mind is We Are the World. If you don't know what that song is or that reference is, YouTube it. But we are the world, we are together, there's unity in here. And then the last bullet here is like, how am I contributing to do and manifest to make my vision clear? Here are a couple, like, my vision is to make people happy. Okay, Walt, thank you, Walt. To have fun, that was one of yours, Jordan, in my journey through life, and to learn from my mistakes. Okay, I want to learn through others' mistakes, but dang it, I got to learn through my own. Okay. And so, as I was putting this together, I found this funny deal where I found it funny too. It's just like, we should write these down. This is the purpose of us writing down a purpose statement. What's your vision? Well, let's write it down because I couldn't find it. And refer to it. So some of this, you know, as mentioned earlier in the question, as far as like, I'm going 100 miles per hour, 100 miles a minute, how can I keep on track? Well, this is something that you can revise and write down. So for me, my vision is truly, it's a oneness in humanity. It's the we are the world. It is peace. I mean, I see us helping each other, bring each other up, right? And how I see myself do that is facilitating seminars like and webinars like this, coaching students, alumni, clients, interns, I hope, through a process through this Hairball. On mine, I also put at the bottom some, as I was thinking, like, what are some of I'm a quotes person. If you follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, I schedule quotes that mean a lot to me, like weeks in advance. And so if you look at my social media, you'll see a lot of quotes. And I just listed a couple here that, like, what are a couple quotes that are foundational to me in my work? And I just have listed a couple there. Okay. Oops, sorry. And then what I do is, based on this language of purpose, values, and vision, what I put together is my philosophy in a paragraph. This could be represented in a song, in a poem, with art. I chose to use words here, like I mentioned earlier. I have this on my LinkedIn profile, and I believe it captures, I didn't use all the same words, but the spirit of it is that I'm on a mission to connect with and inspire people in transition so they can make a positive impact in the world. I approach my work with compassion by developing my craft of facilitation, coaching, and teaching so people will discover their gifts and to become their best selves. I am deeply passionate about social justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and believe that I'm at my best when I'm serving others. And so this philosophy statement, or purpose manifesto, as Richard Leider would say, this is guiding me through this work and through the fogginess and keeps me going.
So then how I approached
Oops, sorry.
the vision, that's okay.
Amen. There we go.
There we go. So how I approached the vision section is I kind of thought of it as my purpose and values in action. And so these are items that I want to do and I see myself doing. And so just some of those are to seek learning opportunities for myself and create opportunities for others, to continue to build and develop relationships, personal and professional, and then promote community as well.
Terrific. And join us, if I may give you some feedback in front of all of our participants. Working with you, I've worked with Jordan since January, and I am very, very fortunate to see how this plays out on your day-to-day work and your temperament. Jordan really rolls up her sleeves, and she is seeking these learning opportunities, as today is this opportunity to co-present here. And also, if I may share, Jordan, that you were talking to some of your friends, I believe, about some resume help or interviewing help recently. Yes. So
yes, I was.
You're passing this on in real time. So talk about integrity. So I'm going to talk about what to do next and suggest some activities that you can do. And then we're going to open it up for some questions here. So this is you've articulated what your purpose is, you've articulated what your values are and your vision, and you've written a statement. Now what? Now it's the knowledge and the gift of knowing how others see you is really profound. And so there are several ways that you can test how you see yourself as far as your identity and your integrity. And one, if people aren't familiar with what a 360 assessment is, this is an assessment that you are asking others to give you feedback regarding various aspects of your life. There's this book called The One Thing, which is a really good career development book. One of the exercises The One Thing has us do is it says, contact friends, relatives, and colleagues and ask them in a sentence or two, what is your purpose? And I did that. And since I'm an extrovert, I sent it to a lot of people. And I was able to look at the language of how people described me. And that's how it informed that my philosophy statement here is I used words that I use, but I saw that some of my colleagues might have used more pointed language here. There's also this assessment website. It's called 360 Reach, and it's an automated 360 assessment tool that you can put a lot of invite people that work with you, friends and family. There's a free version that for 14 days you can get that assessment. If you want to do it for a longer period of time, there is a fee. Surveying people, just having conversations. I've talked about crafting these experiments earlier, and this just means that you are trying things out. You're looking at your values and your visions and your vision, and you're trying to expand and learn more about testing these to see if they truly are either aspirational values or values that you uphold every day. Finding like-minded people, like professional organizations, like might have feedback for you. How are they putting their visions together and having these conversations? Seeking mentors or even mentees where you can provide guidance and receive guidance as well. So with that, I would ask everybody, what's one thing they would plan on doing after the webinar to carry this message forward? How are you going to orbit going forward? And then I put a list again. You're going to have the access to the recording and then also to these slides too. These are live links of books that deal with purpose. That one I mentioned earlier about callings is that second one from the bottom, which is fantastic. Well, I'm recommending these, so they got to all be fantastic, right? I'm just kidding. With that, do you have questions for Jordan and me? So we have a few more minutes.
Thank you so much, Jordan and Vic. This was amazing. I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. And just to reiterate, like Vic said, we have a few minutes for questions, so please type them in the Q&A and we'll get through as many as we can. And Jordan will be facilitating that.
Do we have extra tips for living your values out loud? Yes. And feel people chime in here. Living the values out loud. This is great. So first of all, I would think there's a tool that people can use. It's called the Wheel of Life. And if you Google it, you'll see various different aspects of one's life. And there's spokes here. And if you put a value, it's like a pie. And if you put a value in each slide of the pie, in the middle could represent 0. And on the outer edge, you could put, let's just say number 5. And so with that value, you can let's just say I'm valuing family, okay? And so on a scale of 1 to 5, where am I between 1 and 5 with honoring and living out my value? And so If it's a 3 or if it's a 2, the question is like, okay, wait a minute. How am I going to make that 3 a 5? Or get even, gosh, in this environment, how can I make it a 4? So it really tries to get that espoused value and put attention on it, but then also thinking about some real specific actions that you can take to honor that value.
So we have another question. What resources are available from the Career Center for alumni to help with this process?
We have on our website, if you go even to the student area, we are working on our resources for alumni as well. It's our summer project to bring up things up to date. But you will see that we have some ideas as far as putting your resume together that talks about skill set. And then in the revision of my website, I'm going to share a document with you all in here that's going to have more information as far as how we can go forward with purpose.
So the next question is, how often do you reassess, or how do you think, or do you think about when to reassess?
For me, a couple things for me. I don't set New Year's resolutions. I do, it's like, I call it a personal retreat. And so what I'll do in the December break time for me is I'll do this work. Where have I been? What am I doing? I'll revisit my purpose statement, my philosophy statement, and do I need to make adjustments? And then as the question was asked earlier, as far as the values, how am I living them? I'm going to look for behavior change on how I can do my work and how I can be a better person. So I do that on a yearly basis, but then I'll do mini retreats throughout the year that I don't have. It's more serendipitous.
And then our last question is, has your purpose statement changed over time? And then could you speak on yours and how yours has evolved?
The purpose part, well, Jordan, how about you first? We got a couple minutes. Do you have a response to that for you?
Personally, I don't think, I mean, I haven't really developed a purpose statement before, but thinking back to my kind of what I thought my purpose was earlier, I think it hasn't necessarily evolved, but it's become, I think it used to be a lot more broad, and now I've kind of narrowed it down to specifics.
Thank you. For me personally, we're talking about purpose, values, and vision, right? So the purpose, based on my research, and Simon Sinek is I'm a big fan of that. Start with why. He would say our purpose doesn't change. It is what it is. My why doesn't change. And I would say for me, thinking about, I did a career map from when I was a little kid and what I was doing and what skills I was using over time. And for me, it hasn't changed. It's how I've gone about it, as far as the values have been, depend on circumstances. Some have got more attention than others, but my purpose has really stayed pretty consistent. The third one about vision, to make a better world, that stayed the same. How I go about doing that with this set of skills, that's developed over time too. Thank you so much for your questions, all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much to Vic and Jordan again. Just want to plug a here's a few. There's a lot more. Other upcoming SPH events. 3 of these on this screen are related to the pandemic, which you can find at the URL listed at the bottom. And then trivia night, if you're looking for something fun to do tomorrow night, that can be found on our SPH events calendar. And so I hope y'all will consider joining us for that very fun event. And with that, thank you all for attending. It was so great to see your questions and your engagement. I hope you found this valuable. And thank you again to Vic and Jordan for sharing your perspective and expertise. Have a great day.